You were not born free. You were born within an invisible structure that was programmed before you even knew what it was to choose. This structure has no bars. She has ideas. She has vibrational codes that were installed in you through feelings, not words. And the most dangerous? You believed it was you. But the truth, you have never been disconnected from source. You just went tuned to a frequency that keeps your consciousness looping, revolving around a false identity. This illusion has a name, and it's not just cultural, nor just spiritual. It is vibrational. The Matrix is not the world. It is the mirror of everything you have accepted as real, without ever questioning where it came from. But there is a moment, a silent point, an almost imperceptible moment in which the soul realizes, this here is not everything. And that's where the collapse begins. The collapse of illusion. The collapse of identity. The collapse of the frequency that kept you repeating the same cycles, calling life what was just survival. But what happens when you break that pattern? When does the Matrix stop being the ground and become just a veil? In this video, you will discover why almost no one realizes they are trapped in the vibrational matrix, what really happens to your soul when it starts to leave, and what happens when the field finally stops mirroring the character and starts recognizing the original transmitter of the frequency. You're not trying to wake up, you're already waking up. And that's why everything is falling apart. But the collapse here, it's just the beginning. Are you ready to see what the Matrix tried to make you forget? For a long time, I thought I was the problem. I tried to meditate, align myself, make positive affirmations. But something in me always seemed to be out of place, as if I was trying to access a frequency that didn't recognize me. The days passed with a strange feeling of repetition, as if life was putting me in the same scenario, with different names and faces. And even in the conquests, there was silence, an absence of meaning that I couldn't explain. Until one day, something broke. It wasn't a big deal. It was not a devastating crisis. It was a sentence. Simple. Someone told me, "You're trying to improve the avatar." And I didn't understand right away, but that kept echoing inside me. Avatar? Was that it? Was my whole search actually an attempt to save an identity that was never mine? It was from there that the deconstruction began. I started to observe, paying attention to automatic thoughts, in the feelings that arose before logic. And I started to notice a pattern. I wasn't living. I was reacting to a vibrational script that was installed before I had any conscious choice. This script is the Matrix, not a system created by machines, but a web of beliefs, unprocessed pains, and unconscious vibrational contracts. And I realized that my soul was trying to get out, but she couldn't, because I still believe in the character. It was then that I began to feel the difference between effort and coherence, between presence and spiritual performance, between trying to wake up and simply realizing that I've never been sleeping. It was just tuned to the wrong channel. And if you've made it this far, you might feel something similar. Perhaps you have also noticed that the world around you no longer reflects who you are inside. Perhaps the old motivations have lost their luster. Maybe the silence is becoming more interesting than the rush. This is not failure. It is a sign that the code is starting to break. And if this video has touched you in any way, leaves your presence registered with a like, and subscribe to the Paths of Light channel. Because here, each video is a vibrational memory, a silent invitation back to the field, to the original frequency, the one who doesn't need to prove anything, because she just end. There comes a time when the world around you continues to function, but you feel like you're no longer in it. People's words lose weight. The days pass without depth, and even your own dreams seem programmed by another consciousness. It's not depression. It's not common discouragement. It's like something in you has begun to awaken, but was still trapped in the vibrational shell of the old me. This I that was shaped by other people's expectations, due to inherited traumas, for repeated cycles that you never consciously chose. But he continued to call it life. You look back and realize many of the decisions he made did not come from his center. They came from emotional urgencies, from fears that were passed on as an energetic inheritance, from a silent need to be accepted, even if it meant abandoning parts of themselves. The spiritual disconnect you feel, it is not the absence of soul. It is the symptom of a soul trying to free from the identity that the mind has embraced to survive. And here the climb begins. You try to align yourself, practice techniques, look for the positive, do everything right. But the emptiness remains there, and it confuses you because you believe something is wrong with you, when, in fact, it's the opposite. You are starting to come out of collective hypnosis, and the first stage of awakening is not clarity, it is noise. The field emits more signals, the coincidences multiply, the "I've seen this before" feeling intensifies. But what changes is not what happens outside, it's how you react to it. Old situations resurface. Emotional patterns you thought you had overcome reappear. But now, you realize you don't need to enter the game anymore. What once activated your pain now only ignites your perception. This is the beginning of the vibrational collapse of the inner matrix. She doesn't fall with rebellion, falls with presence. You don't have to tear down walls, just stop reinforcing them. And it is at this point that life begins to test your coherence. Are you still seeking external validation? Or do you start moving through the frequency of your silent truth? Do you still fear judgment? Or do you already realize that the other person's gaze only activates what you haven't yet embraced within yourself? Do you still repeat mantras to convince the field? Or it starts to vibrate with such authenticity that the field has no choice but to respond? True alignment begins when spiritual performance dies, and the real being emerges, not as an idea, but as a living frequency that does not need to be explained. It is in this state that reconnection happens, and it doesn't require practice, requires release, because everything you seek is already looking for you too, just waiting for you to be quiet enough to listen. What you are feeling now has been described thousands of years ago. In older traditions, this moment of spiritual disconnection was not seen as weakness, but as the beginning of the sacred crossing. The Vedas, ancient texts from India, speak of avidya, spiritual ignorance, not as a lack of information, but as the illusion that we are just the form and not the vibration that animates the form. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes, "When you lose meaning, you look for meaning. When it loses its meaning, it looks for its name." This process of trying to understand intellectually is the natural reaction of a soul that is beginning to remember what you forgot. In Kabbalah, there is the concept of klipo, energetic shells that surround the divine spark of the soul. These shells are the blockages, the noises, the distortions that we accumulate throughout our incarnations. And the moment we begin to feel the pain of these shells is the sign that we are ready to dissolve them. Carl Jung, when studying the human psyche through a spiritual lens, said, "The encounter with the self is the confrontation with one's own shadow. And there is no awakening without going through the dark night of the soul." He understood that inner collapse was not the end. It was the rite of passage, something that shamans called initiatory death. For them, there was no true healer who had not died psychologically first. The loss of meaning is the birth of the sensible. And here comes a point that few mention. The spiritual disconnect you feel may not be yours alone. According to ancient healing traditions, such as Hawaiian Huna or Ayurvedic medicine, we carry energetic imprints from previous generations. Fears that you weren't born with. Silences that are not yours. Sensations that cross lineages. You feel like you are far away from life. But it could be that you are just caught up in the unspoken pains of your family tree. And the field responds to everything you carry, not just what you remember. Therefore, the true path of return to presence begins before the mind. It starts in the body, in the vibrational release of what the body absorbed and was never able to let go of. And this is not done by force, it is done by tuning. In Egyptian initiatory schools, initiates spent years in silence before uttering a single sacred word. Because only after the internal noise ceased, the soul could hear the original sound, the sound of the source. This journey you are experiencing now, it is the same path described in all myths: the descent into the underworld, the hero's collapse, the exile of light. But in myths, there is always a point where the hero stops fighting the darkness and starts to listen what she wants to show. It is that moment that is approaching. The night is not your enemy. It's just the womb of the new you. And the more you silence, the more the field reveals. Because the memory you are looking for will not come with words, will come with vibrational recognition. Something will pulse inside you. And in that pulse, the soul breathes again. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the emptiest moments are the ones full of meaning? But the meaning is not clear. He doesn't come with explanations. He insinuates himself. Like that moment when you enter a new place, and without knowing why, you feel as if you've been there before. Or when you look into someone's eyes and it's like you remember a story you never lived. These flashes are not random. They are vibrational traces, fragments of what his soul could not completely forget. But the curious thing is that the more you try to understand with your mind, the more it escapes you. Because this forgotten truth does not reveal itself under analysis, but under surrender. The field does not respond to logic, responds to frequency. And that's why many feel disconnected without understanding its origin. It doesn't start in thoughts. It starts with what the body stores, and the consciousness has not yet decoded. Maybe you haven't walked away from life. Maybe you're hearing life through an old filter, a frequency that has learned to protect, to control, to adapt. But now, it no longer resonates with who you are becoming, and the field feels it before you know it. So he starts sending back signals. Desire to isolate oneself, more vivid dreams, feelings of déjà vu, irritations for no reason, and mainly, a silent urgency. Not running, but of to remember. Remember that there is a part of you that was never lost. She's there, in the space between thoughts, in the gap between emotions. And sometimes it reveals itself in small symptoms. That urge to cry for no reason. That silence that seems to look back at you. That urge to drop everything, even without knowing what comes next. These signs are not chaos. They are codes. Vibrational codes emitted by the field, so you can find your way back to coherence. But most people ignore them, because they are busy trying to correct the disconnection, instead of listening to it. They try to fill the void, without realizing that it is in the void that the truth is inscribed. And here's a detail that almost no one talks about. The soul does not disconnect by accident. She falls silent, to allow you to hear what the world has muffled. She retreats, not as a weakness, but as a strategy, because there is something she wants to reveal, but which can only be accessed when you stop looking, when you simply breathe and feel. And in that feeling, something lights up. A memory without an image. A certainty without origin. A presence. That was always there. But be careful. This memory does not come alone. It comes with a choice. You can mute the call, or you can allow him to open a portal. A portal not to the future, but to a forgotten point of your spiritual past, a point where your soul made a choice, and that choice still pulses in the field, waiting for your return. But what exactly was chosen? And why did you accept forgetting, only to later need to remember? This answer cannot be put into words, but she vibrates, and the vibration is about to emerge. Breaking out of the matrix doesn't turn your life into instant paradise. In fact, in the first few moments, everything may seem even more chaotic. But there is a crucial difference. Now, you see, you feel it. You are no longer sleeping inside the narrative. Remember that invisible weight we talked about at the beginning? That feeling of delay between you and the present, as if you were living with a veil between your eyes? This veil does not disappear all at once. It dissolves little by little, with each conscious choice. And with that, the body begins to change. The mind slows down. The psychic noises move away. You begin to breathe from a deeper place, not just with your lungs, but with your presence. The first psychological benefit is silent, almost imperceptible, the subtle clarity. Things that used to shake you now pass you by. Situations that used to cause anxiety are now seen from the outside, as if your consciousness was one step ahead of the automatic reaction. This clarity does not come from the intellect. It arises from disidentification with the system. The matrix wants you to react, but when you observe without reacting, when you feel without identifying, you are no longer within the frequency that feeds the system. You become invisible to him. The second transformation is even more profound: the reconstruction of identity. Without the matrix dictating who you should be, you begin to remember who you are outside of the narratives. The mind tries to fill the void with new roles, but the soul begins to vibrate. And in this new vibration, you rediscover the pleasure of simplicity. Walking, breathing, being with someone, effortlessly. It's as if life stops being a performance and become a presence again. The third change comes with time, the energetic coherence. Internal contradictions begin to dissolve. What you feel, think, and do comes into alignment. Not because you are trying to be coherent, but because it no longer makes sense to lie vibrationally. The body no longer accepts, but there comes a time where there are no more masks to remove. You are there, raw, naked before your own conscience, and something inside you knows. There is no going back. You have broken through the illusion, and in doing so, he realized that the world had not changed, but you, yes. The silence now seems full of life. The eyes see more than images. They see vibrations. Words weigh less. Judgments dissolve. Urgency disappears. And time begins to obey your presence. Because when you break free from the matrix, time stops controlling you. You start moving reality from the field, no longer from impulses. But this freedom carries a sacred price. The responsibility of not going back to sleep, of not using the new level of perception to repeat old patterns, now with spiritual language, of not becoming hostage to a new truth just because it seems more elevated. The matrix is not just an external system, it is an internal trend. A constant movement of the mind seeking security in the known. So the real break is not the end of the matrix, it's the end of your identification with her. And when this identification dissolves, what is left? The field is left. There's only now. That leaves you, nameless, scriptless, role-less, frequency only. And it is at this point that a new question begins to emerge. If everything you knew was part of the illusion, then who are you now, out of the dream? Because the next level is not waking up. It's staying awake, within a world that insists on making you sleep. And that is the true initiation, the crossing that only the lucid face. But don't worry, you are not alone. Others also woke up, and silently, they are looking for you. Now choose the next video that appears on the screen. He's not there by chance. Feel it. It is the echo of your next step. And remember, you are light. Even when the world tries to erase you,